Right, Dr.
Thank you
Wolff,
for having me.
Yeah, it's a pleasure. You spoke at this conference this week. Perhaps let's just start by trying to unpack the G20's traditional view of Africa. What has it been over time?
Well, as you know, the G20 has practically replaced the G7 as an informal grouping for coordinating economic policies. The traditional view of the G8, G7 was more or less the North-South view, and Africa benefited from the G7 also through pledges for development assistance to Africa. Now the G20 is a different body because the G20 has also the BRICS countries and other emerging economies around the table on eye level. And it's a forum for coordinating policies. It's not a forum for pledging development assistance or something like that. So the view on Africa, particularly through the membership of South Africa, is on eye level. And South Africa, yeah.
Is South Africa's voice, I mean, it is a lone voice in this grouping, enough to represent the continent, and is it being heard?
Well, actually, South Africa is not representing Africa. Each member is representing its own country. China is representing China and not Asia, and South Africa is not representing Africa, but South Africa can support Africa to bring forward its concerns, to bring its issues on the table of the G20. For example, one issue that the G20 has been dealing with is food security and volatile and rising food prices. And the question is whether through coordinated policies of the leading economies, food prices can be brought down, agricultural investments can be increased, and that's obviously of concern not for South Africa, or not only for South Africa, but for Africa as a whole. And South Africa can help to bring Africa's concerns on the table and also solutions which can be discussed by the G20.
I keep on wondering, and I'm asking the question again, I guess, is Africa high on the agenda of the G20, or only so far as maybe they need commodities and so on and so forth? Are the issues of the continent high on the agenda there?
What is on the agenda of the G20 is the global economy and global growth. But the G20, and particularly the industrialized countries in the G20, they know that future growth will come from the developing world. Europe is not growing. The US is not growing much. Japan is not growing. So growth is coming from the BRICS countries and from the developing world in the future. So this growth obviously will benefit the whole world and will also benefit the industrialized countries. So that's why Africa is playing a role as a focus, as a continent for growth, not only in the future, already now. We have stable 5% growth all over Africa. This is important for the world economy. So Africa is not seen as a source for commodities, or not only as a source for commodities, but as a source of growth.
All right. You spoke at the conference. What was the main thrust of your message?
I spoke about the financial reform agenda of the G20 and how this affects Africa. And the financial reform agenda of the G20 is mainly focused on the question, how can the global financial system be made safer in order to avoid a financial crisis as we have seen it in recent years, and at the same time develop the financial system to make the world economy grow, and particularly to make developing economies grow. And this is a dilemma. The more you regulate, the more maybe you can inhibit growth in countries. That's also the concern of the financial industry. But we know we need regulation in the financial industry. And this affects also Africa, because African countries, particularly South Africa with its modern and integrated financial sector, depends on the rules which are made on the global level. But also other African countries such as Kenya, Nigeria, with a developed financial sector, they depend on this, and it's important that they participate in the discussion on rule-making for the financial sector on a global level.
All right, so unfortunately we've run out of time. We're going to have to leave it there, but thank you very much indeed for joining us on the program this day, Dr. Wolff.
Thank you for having me.
All right, okay, so that was Dr. Peter Wolff, who's with the German Development Institute, who was at the African G20 conference, wondering and analysing the G20's interaction with the continent. Right, let's